Good afternoon, everybody. Oh, I'm excited and I'm giddy and I'm jittery and I'm experiencing a wide gamut of emotions. And let me tell you why. Although, if you are listening and watching right now, you probably know why. I have probably already shared my high levels of excitement with you. Today, I get to interview Sam Horn, somebody that well, I never say somebody is my idol. I don't use that word, but somebody that has impacted my work, my state of mind, my perspective in more ways than I can possibly describe. So let me tell you first how I came across the amazing and inspiring Sam Horn. I was at a conference in Amsterdam. This was a few years ago, probably 4, maybe even 5 years ago. Time flies. I'm sitting at the conference and we have a full day of speakers, presenters, extremely high energy, lots of learning, lots of thinking, lots of taking down notes, brainstorming, just an extremely, extremely busy day. And then they announced that our last speaker of the day will be joining us via Skype. And I said, oh no, I do not have the bandwidth to be able to be engaged and, fully plugged in and still, have my brain on at the end of such a busy day. It was already getting dark outside and it's a Skype presentation. And mind you, this was 5 years ago. Today, Skype presentation, Zoom presentation might not sound so shocking to any of us. But at the time, I said, how am I going to stay plugged in? Well, let me tell you, I don't remember how long the talk was. It was Sam Horn's talk. I don't remember how long, but I remember at the end of it feeling it was not long enough. I sat on the edge of my seat. I shushed people around me if they started talking, and I was just writing and writing and writing. And, I've been to so many talks and so many conferences. I'm very fortunate and I'm always looking for knowledge. But that particular talk just stood out to me. It impacted me. I was looking at Sam speak, I was listening, I was taking down notes and thinking, when I grow up, I want to be just like this one. And then after that, I started reading Sam's books. So there are amazing books. Tan Fu really stands out to me, but she has a few and they're all fantastic. And I would read them and I would get further inspired, and years passed. And then I said, can I be audacious and try to get an opportunity to interview Sam for a podcast that I was working on launching? And so I reached out to her, and I reached out to her, and I reached out to her. But Sam is a busy lady. She has, by the way, her credentials. She's spoken at South by Southwest, U.S. Navy, Boeing. I'm forgetting. She's on the list of best speakers along with Seth Godin. Like, her credentials are out there. So I tried and I tried and I tried and I tried. I stooped to the point of, because I was following Sam on every platform, every social media platform, I sent her an Instagram direct message. I was that desperate to just get a chance to talk to her. And she replied. And you should have seen me. I was running around the house. I was telling everybody. I was just so, so energized. We spoke, and once again, I felt transformed even further. Now, Sam has a new book that recently came out, and I'm reading this book right now, and the book is called Someday is Not a Day in the Week. It was my goal to finish reading this book before interviewing Sam today. And so I was reading, and then I decided, you know what? This is one of those rare books where you can actually savor it. And instead of just reading quick and getting through books, which is it's sometimes that I do, I do it quite often with marketing books, business books, etc. But this book is one you sit down, you get a blind key. I've been sitting on my balcony and just really, really savoring it. I also have to say, before I stop talking and I let Sam take up all the space talking and I'll just sit here quietly, Sam has also been incredibly gracious to start a few Facebook groups. So there was one group on how to read a book. The second group is kind of like a reading club on some days, not a day of the week. In these times that have been hard and heavy for all of us, and most of the time you see me on screen, I'm smiling, I'm trying to make jokes, I'm being very jovial. It's not always the case behind closed doors. I have my behind days, I have my heavy days, I have my days, full of despair and tears and confusion. And it's those rare people like Sam Horn that are able to shift our perspective, that are able to shift the narrative in a way that inspires, that gives hope, and that completely shifts how we're feeling. So without further ado, and I'm so excited, let me please introduce one of the most amazing people I've had the pleasure meeting, Sam Horn.
Thank you, Marina. I've really been looking forward to talking about how we can focus on what matters and put it into motion now, not someday.
Which, I have to first ask you the first question. How do you have this amazing ability, Sam? Where does it come from to look at pretty much every situation and shift your perspective, shift it with the narrative, with the words you use, your outlook? Where does that incredible ability come from?
I owe it all to Reader's Digest. I grew up in a small town in Southern California, more horses than people. And every holiday, whether it was Christmas or Thanksgiving or Easter, we would go to my grandmother's house. And if the weather was good, we would go outside and we would play. If the weather was not so good, we were banished to the back porch. This was back in the days when kids were to be seen and not heard. However, it wasn't really a banishment because there were stacks of Reader's Digest. And I remember reading these Reader's Digest and discovering quotes for the first time. And so many of these quotes would resonate with me and would make me feel that's how I want to show up in the world. And so I believe that quotes are distilled wisdom. And throughout our session today, we're going to share some of my favorite quotes. For example, Paulo Coelho said, "One day you're going to wake up and there won't be any time left to do the things you've always wanted to do." So see, that quote really prompted my Someday book. And why is it that we procrastinate and put off things that really matter to us? And then how can we get proactive instead of reactive and act on them now instead of later? Because now is the new later.
Love it. You're so masterful with words. But I have to tell you, when I was doing my new wave of online stalking of you, because every now and then that is what I do, I saw that a former executive producer of the Oprah Winfrey Show called you one of the bright lights in our culture today. And I have to tell you, when I read that, it resonated so deeply. So before I jump into questions, I just want to tell you, and I hope people tell you this very frequently, you do bring an incredible light, and the impact of it is really meaningful. So I just wanted to say that to you.
Thanks, Marina. In fact, let's give a shout out. That's Sherry Salata. And Sherry Salata was executive producer of the Oprah Winfrey Show for many years. And she also ran Harpo and she ran OWN. And can we tell a little story about Sherry? Because it may be relevant to people who are listening in, watching today.
Please.
Good. I'm part of a group called Transformational Leadership Council. And so Sherry was being interviewed and she said, almost as an aside, well, if I ever write a book, I know what I'm going to call it. And I said, what? And she said, I did everything all wrong and it turned out all right. Well, that's a drop the mic moment. That's a great title. And that wasn't what the interview was about. So she continued. However, I ran up to her at break and I said, Sherry, that is a perfect title. I said, tell me you're writing that book. And she said, Sam, I don't know where to start. I mean, do I start with Oprah's birthday party with Beyonce and Chris Rock and Michael Jordan and Jerry Seinfeld? Do I talk about delivering a baby, in a 7-Eleven parking lot? And so I said, you're an executive producer. I said, you can executive produce your book. Now, Marina, I know you're working on a book, right?
I'm getting started on the journey towards it, baby steps.
Now, see, if you want to be pragmatic, and I know we're going to talk about someday, however, I know that many people right now is the best time. They're not going to have more time. They're not going to wait for the right time. So if you've even thought about writing a book or a blog, do you want to take 2 minutes right now and I'll show you how you can kickstart that project?
Yes, please.
Okay, get a piece of paper. I think you know that I ran the Maui Writers Conference for 17 years. And in 17 years, our authors didn't agree on anything. It was Terry Brooks would say you have to write first thing in the morning. And Dave Barry would say, I don't get going until the afternoon. Here's what they agreed on. Ink it when you think it. So fresh piece of paper. Sound good? Now, everyone do this. Even if you're not thinking about writing a book, maybe you're going to write a report, or maybe you're going to write a LinkedIn article. So here's how to do it. All right, up in the upper left-hand corner, put 200. Let's just say this is going to be a 200-page book. It's not a 350-page door stopper, and it's not a 100-page Who Moved My Cheese. 200, right?
Yeah.
Now, underneath it, put 10, because we are going to agree that no chapter is longer than 10 pages. Because if we're plowing through a 30-page chapter, it's hard work. We put the book down. Who knows if we come back, because it feels like we're not making any progress.
That is daunting.
That's exactly right. The psychology of completion says that when we finish something like a chapter, we get a little dopamine hit and rewarded behavior gets repeated. So 10-page or less chapters, guess what? That's 20 chapters, right? So put 200, 10, and 20. 200 pages, 10-page or less chapters. Now we've got 20 chapters. So just write on your notes, have 4 lines of 5 boxes. Just go ahead and do it right now. So you have 4 lines and 5 boxes. There's your 20 chapters. We're getting that book, which is swirling around in the head. I don't know where to start. And I have all these stories and all these notes and all these ideas, but it's vague, right? We're going to make it visual. All right. Now, first box up in the left-hand corner. Okay. That's your intro. And I'm going to give you, put why me, question mark. Why this topic, question mark, all in the first box. Why you, question mark. Why now, question mark. And why this way? Now, in 4 pages, why me, you're going to jump into the scene where you became on a mission about this topic, when you thought, enough, this is awful. Somebody's got to do something about this. I'm as much as somebody as anybody. I'm going to do something. So jump right into the story where you decided that you were going to write this because it mattered. It was important. It was needed. All right. Next, why this topic? Now get some research. Go ahead and Google GTS, Google that stuff. What are startling statistics about blank, about your topic? If you're writing about stress, what are startling statistics about stress? What are startling statistics about parenting? And I guarantee you will come up with things you didn't know. And if you don't know them, your readers don't know them. It's the quickest way to give gravitas to your topic, because now it's not just your opinion. It's not just something you care about. It shows about the impact of this, right? Okay, next is why you. We're going to start off with some have you ever questions. Like, have you ever, if you're writing about confidence, have you ever walked into a room full of strangers and felt like a wallflower? Have you ever struggled in a meeting and not spoken up because you didn't know what to say? The goal is to have about 5 have you ever questions where people are going, yes, that's happened to me. Or yes, I've wondered about that or worried about that. See, we've made it interactive already and people have bought into it because they relate to it and they want it, right? Next, why now? Judy Tenuta said, my parents always told me I wouldn't amount to anything because I procrastinated so much. I told them, just you wait. So see, why are people waiting to act on this topic? Are they busy and they think they'll do it later? Do they think it's not so urgent? Why can't they afford to wait? And then why this way is, maybe you say right to the reader, I know you're busy. I know you don't have a lot of time. And that's why I've condensed my content into 10-page or less chapters so you can dip in and derive value. And then the rest of it, just say, well, I want to talk about this story and I want to talk about that idea. And here are my 6 steps. And do you know, in 5 minutes, you can flesh out your book. And all of a sudden, it's like, now we can see it. It's no longer swirling around in our mind. And then we just start fleshing out each chapter and rock and roll. You're on your way.
That is incredible. Thank you. And again, that's just your ability to take something and then distill it. And I find that clarity of mind and clarity of thinking is just a priceless ability to have. But so I feel that often we procrastinate on things, and especially women do, because of the imposter syndrome. We feel that we're just never ready enough, right? So in my case, I want to write a book. It is I want to research the concept of personal branding. Right now, it's very anecdotal in the market, and I want to go really deep into the topic, and I have a personal story to back it up. But so what I did was I applied for a master's program so that I can feel that I'm less of an imposter and I'm more credible, and there's a degree behind it, and I did something extra. And that is just so frequent. It's just a frequent thing I hear from people, and especially women. So what are your thoughts on the imposter syndrome? And do you encounter it with women as well?
Well, actually, with a lot of people, because they think they're not perfect. And I think that perfection is just another way to spell procrastination. So let me tell you one of my favorite stories about someone who had imposter syndrome, and hopefully her epiphany will give everyone watching an epiphany. So never again will they take themselves out of the game because they worry they're not perfect. So the very first year of the Maui Writers Conference, I was the MC in addition to being the executive director. So I would go out in the morning and walk up and down the beach to get my intro straight. Here's a woman crying on the beach. And I went over, I said, "Are you okay?" And she said, "I'm not okay." I said, "What's going on?" She said, "I don't belong here." I said, "You don't belong here?" She said, "Who am I to write a book?" She said, "It's like you're putting yourself up on a pedestal. It's like you're saying you're perfect. I'm not perfect. Who am I to write a book?" And I asked her, I said, "What do you want to write about?" Now, this was Jana Wolf, and she and her husband had adopted a child, and he was very challenging. And she said, "I went to the bookstores. I went to the libraries. I tried to find something to help. And there were all these Pollyanna books about what a blessing it was to be an adoptive parent. They just made me feel worse." And she said, "I want to write the book I need, I can't find." And I said, "Jana, what's an example of what you want to write about?" And she thought about it for a moment. She said, "I want to write about the time that Ari is 3 years old and I fix spaghetti for dinner, and he reaches across the table and he grabs a handful of spaghetti and he throws it in my face." And my first thought was, my son would never have done that. And the shame that I felt that thought had even occurred to me. And I said, "What else?" She said, "I want to write about, even though Ari is challenging, when it's time to send pictures of him to his birth mother, I edit out the cute ones because I live in daily fear she's going to change her mind and want him back." I said, "Jana, the question to ask is not, am I perfect? Do I have a PhD? Has it been done before?" I said, "You know what the question to ask is? Would someone reading my book benefit? Because if someone reading your book will benefit, not only do you have the right to write, you have a responsibility to write." Have you ever thought about it that way? Books and ideas and stories in our heads help no one. If our stories might reach out to someone and be the right words at the right time, then not only do we have a right, we have a responsibility. By the way, you can go online right now to your favorite bookstore or to Amazon, and there is Secret Thoughts of an Adoptive Mother by Jana Wolf. And she said, "Sam, not a week goes by that I don't hear from someone that says, I thought I was the only one." So Marina, the question is not, are you perfect? The question is, in sharing your stories and your experiences and your insights, it is not arrogant. it is an offering.
Beautiful. I just need a moment to let it soak in. I wrote it down so that I can reread it later. But it is beautiful. And I also love the thinking of writing a book that you yourself can find, that you yourself would need. And I like that, as the first step in the thinking process. I think it's beautiful. Sam, I know that you have an incredible strength, and that is where Intrigue Agency came from, and the books got your attention, and Pamfu. You have this ability to. Well, I've actually recently been speaking to somebody who says, he is a new consultant. He was a massively successful entrepreneur and is now a consultant, and has been saying, well, what is my unique value proposition? What is my angle? And so I told him, you need to book a call with Sam Horn, because she listens to all of your rambling and then spits out something that is incredibly punchy, distilled, and you're just masterful with that. So what made you decide to not continue writing on the topic of elevator pitch and marketing and content and messaging? What inspired you to write this book? Where did your idea come from?
That's a wonderful question, Marina, because like you said, for years now, I've been speaking all around the world for Inc. 500 and Fortune 500 companies, et cetera. And there was a catalyzing event that set me out on a mission to write that book. And I was in Southern California, and I just finished a very intense 2-day consult. And my son Andrew calls, and he sensed something in my voice. And he said, "What's up, Mom?" And I said, "Andrew, I'm so exhausted. I don't even know how I'm going to get on this plane tonight. I've got to fly back to the East Coast and then fly back in a couple days for a keynote." And there was this long pause, and then he jumped in with both feet and he said, "Mom, there's something about you I don't understand. You have your own business. You're an entrepreneur. You've created a life where you can do just about anything you want to, and you're not taking advantage of it." Out of the mouths of 20-somethings, I thought, he's right. And he was the one who said, "Why don't you play hooky for a day? You've been working so hard. You deserve this." He said, "I'll book you into a hotel. You can run your business from there for the next couple of days and then fly up to San Francisco on Friday." So Marina, the next day I got up and I threw on my backpack and I just went exploring. And I was drawn as if by a magnet to the Laguna Beach bookstore and to the shelf of books by writers for writers: Stephen King, Julia Cameron, Annie Lamott. And something welled up in me and it said, I am a writer. That's who I am. And yet I had put writing aside because of my business. I was in the middle of what I call the consultant creative conundrum, where we end up making our living helping other people with our work and not getting our work out into the world. Well, I was very fortunate because there was another catalyzing event, and I decided to set off for a year by the water. And I was going to visit Walden Pond and Helen Keller's water pump, where she said her first word. And I was going to write about water, and I was going to write about people who are happy and who are leading meaningful lives, and interview them and find out, what did it take for you to get crystal clear about why you're here? And then how did you have the courage and the clarity and the confidence to set it in motion? And Marina, of all the people, how I came up with that title is that I met thousands of people across the world, really. And when I interviewed them, what made you happy? Are you happy? If so, why so? If not, why not? A theme emerged, and that it was that people somehow felt it was selfish to be happy, that they were responsible, right? They have family counting on them. They have responsibilities. They have employees, and they had taken themselves out of their own story. And they were promising themselves that someday, when it wasn't so busy, that they would do that. Someday, when the kids went off to school, they would go ahead and pursue that. Someday, when things slow down at work. And as Rene Ricard said, tomorrow is another day, but so is yesterday. So hopefully that book is what are our some days? What are we promising ourselves we'll do someday when we're not so busy, when, some of our obligations are taken care of, because that's a path to regrets. And I don't want us to lead a life to regrets. I want us to have results instead of regrets.
Love it. You know what? Everybody who's listening to us right now, everybody who's watching, why don't you share in comments below? What is the first thing that comes to mind that you really want to do in the future, just now you think is not the right time, not the right circumstances, maybe especially because of the current state of affairs, we're limited in a lot of what we can do. Share with us. I would be curious to know, and I'll make sure to share with Sam as well.
You know what? We're going to do an exercise right now because I have a friend, Mary Loverty, who gave a graduation talk at a graduation at her alma mater. And this was a smaller college. And when all the grads got on the stage for their picture with great fanfare, they tore open their robes and they were wearing T-shirts underneath that said, "I don't know."
Right.
In fact, one young man in his 30s, he has 2 kids, one with special needs. And when I asked, what would put the light on in your eyes? What's your dream or your goal or your someday? He thought about it for a moment and he said, "I don't dream anymore. It's too painful." Yikes. So there's a little exercise we can do. It takes about 4 minutes. And once again, I'm being a pragmatist. I know that people are struggling right now and suffering right now. They may have lost their job or their income. So they may think that happiness is off the table, that it even seems frivolous or far away or distant or impossible. So I'm not suggesting we go off on a year by the water. I am suggesting we get crystal clear about one thing we can do each day that will help us control the quality of our life to the degree possible. So do we have time to do that exercise?
Please, I think it is so necessary for so many people.
Very good. Then please draw a big box on your note. So a big square. And now divide it into 4 smaller squares. So put a vertical line down the center, horizontal line across the center. So you have 4 squares. Now, upper left is square number 1. Upper right is square number 2. Lower left is square number 3. And lower right is square number 4. Now we're going to play like a word association game, and I'm going to say something, and please write down whatever comes to mind. Don't censor it. First thought, best thought, most honest thought. So in square number 1, please write down right now, what are you doing in your life that you want to? Even in the midst of COVID and coronavirus, what are you doing in your life that you want to in square 1? Where maybe you're walking your dog every morning. That's what you're doing. Maybe you do have your own business. That's what you're doing that you want to. Maybe you are FaceTiming with family. Can't get together in person. However, you're FaceTiming. Maybe you're reading your kids a story every night at bedtime. So what are you doing in your life that you want to? All right, let's go over to square 2. Now, by the way, Marina, if you would like, we will make this available on your page later out so people can print it out and then fill it out with their family members or their coworkers, because it gives such epiphanies to what is being repressed and suppressed, and the resentment that may be coming up in a relationship, especially in close quarters where we're not talking about these things, and it's this undercurrent of resentment that is existing in our life because we're not talking about these things that we're putting off or not doing. Okay.
Agree. I just want to say I just want to repeat what you said, because sometimes, you throw out those gems really quickly and then you keep talking, but they're really gems. First thought, the best thought. I love that, because so often we will just overthink and get lost and confused and, what to prioritize. And when you say that, that's so clear, so simple, and love it. I'm sorry. Please go on.
And thank you, because we want to be honest here. That's the point, Marina, is that if we can't admit it, we can't address it. And what I have found, once again, in all these interviews, is that people are not even talking anymore about what they want. Because I've got 2 parents with dementia, it's like, that's off the table. It's like, I'm trying to work from home and raise 3 kids and fix dinner and cook. So see, They feel that this is not even an option. And we want to bring it back into life, even if it's 10-minute a day option, because I have found if we're doing one thing a day that puts the light on in our eyes, it can compensate for the other 98% of our life that's out of our control. Okay, so let's go up to square two. All right. All right. What are you not doing that you want to? Maybe what you're not doing that you want to is you used to go to the gym, or you used to play a sport that you loved, or you used to do yoga, and you're not doing that. Maybe what you're not doing that you want to is that you're not traveling. Maybe, jumping on a plane and going places for you, the novelty of it, it gives you something to look forward to. Maybe what you're not doing that you want to is that you're not giving back. Maybe you're falling into a depression right now and you just don't have the motivation to help others. So what are you not doing that you want to? Maybe you're not dating. Maybe you're single and you're looking for your significant other and you're just not doing anything in that. So what are you not doing that you want to? All right, square three. Ready?
Yeah.
What are you doing and you don't want to? Maybe you're overeating right now and you don't want to. Maybe you're spending way too much time on Netflix and you don't want to. Or maybe you're scrolling social media and you don't want to. Or maybe you're fighting with a significant other and you don't want to. So what are you doing that you don't want to? All right, square four, you see this one coming. What are you not doing and you don't want to? Now, this is a double negative. However, I call this the Pema Schroden box, because Pema said, nothing ever really goes away until it teaches us what we need to know. See, these are lessons learned. Maybe we used to smoke and we don't smoke anymore. We're not doing it and we don't want to. Maybe we used to commute 2 or 3 hours a day and we're not doing it and we don't want to. Maybe we used to be in a toxic relationship and we're out of that relationship and we don't want to get in that toxic relationship again. So what are you not doing and you don't want to? Now, afterwards, once again, I really recommend people print out this box and just get everything they can in these boxes, because once we admit it, we can address it. Here's the question, though, now. Please circle what's in box 1 and 4. So please circle your answers in 1 and 4. Guess what? That's what's contributing to your quality of life. Make sure you keep those things in square 1 and make sure you keep those things in square 4, because when we asked what was right with your life, these things came up. Boom. That's what makes every day right. Now, circle what's in square 2 and 3, because that's what's wrong with your life, and that's where the some days lurk. These are the things that we want to do, that are important to us, that put the light on in our eyes, that make us feel proud of ourselves or give us something that we can look, and we're not doing them. However, here's another quote. Have you ever flown into Dulles Airport in Washington, D.C. by any chance?
No.
Okay. I bet many people watching have. John Foster Dulles, that airport is named after him, said, "The mark of a successful organization is not whether it has problems. It's whether it has the same problems it had last year." Here's the question. How long, right? Because I don't know anyone who's perfect. We're always going to have things in box 2 and 3. The question is, how long have we been putting off those things we really know are a priority to us? How long have we been promising ourselves we'll do them someday? And here's the action part of it, is that look at something in box 2. What is one step you can take to move it forward today? If you're not dating anyone, maybe you get up on Match today. If you're not traveling, you can't jump on a plane, but maybe you can take a virtual tour of the national parks or the great museums. So see, there is something, even if it's for 10 or 15 minutes today, you can start acting on too. All of a sudden, in a world where we cannot control much, we can control that. And that is when our true priorities and our time priorities start aligning. And you know what Gandhi said? Happiness is when what we think, what we say, and what we do is in harmony. And what I have found is that our true priorities, what really matters to us, and our time priorities, what we actually spend our time on, sometimes they're not in harmony. And once again, if we can just even do one thing and make a true priority a time priority, even if it's for 10 minutes, it can compensate for the rest of our life that is not what we want it to be. And we feel, to the degree possible, we are taking responsibility for our happiness instead of thinking it's just off the table.
Beautiful again. This exercise made me feel a little bit emotional because you certainly open up and you feel vulnerable. I will ask, again, all of you watching to share as much as you feel comfortable sharing, especially those things that were in the box of what you want to be doing and you're not. Sometimes putting things out there, I feel it's uncomfortable, but then you hold yourself accountable more. And I will share all of mine. What about you, Sam? Can I put you on the spot and ask what's in some of your boxes?
Well, you know what? Yeah, thank you. I'll be honest, is that I really believe managing our mindset is what we can control in the face of this. And as you can probably see, I'm normally a very proactive person. I have my big three. Every single day, what can I do? I can see, connect. So I FaceTime with my son, Andrew and Mickey and Hero, or I FaceTime with my son, Tom and Patty, and I FaceTime with someone who's in my current circle, and I always FaceTime with someone I haven't been in touch with, who is an old college buddy I kept telling myself I'd get in touch with, and I haven't, who's someone who used to live in Washington, D.C., and I haven't seen him for years. So every day I connect with someone. The next is to contribute creatively. For me, my mission in life is to make a positive difference for as many people as possible while leading a happy, healthy, contributing life with friends and family. So for me, writing or doing the Someday Book Club, how am I making a difference? If I wake up and I feel like I'm purposeful, that at the end of the day, hopefully there is someone who's out there who's a little better off because of something I read, they read, or something I said, then that was a meaningful day for me. So it's connect, contribute creatively, and the third is cavort. Now, I'm really lucky because I live on a lake in Boulder, and I have open space along these foothills. And instead of being cooped up all inside, I know I'm very fortunate. I get to go outside and connect with nature and cavort. And what I mean by cavort, instead of moving with this grim smile, grim look on my face and about an aerobic workout and, get my heart rate up and, no, it's about looking around and absorbing and drinking in nature and being filled with joy. And if I do my big three, I have a little cocoon here. I'm very fortunate where I can stay positive. Every once in a while, though, I dip into the reality of the situation. And I do not watch news, but maybe one of my clients will talk to me about something outrageous that's been going on or the suffering that is going on. And so last week, I really dipped into one day thinking about how long is this going to go on? And I don't know if I can keep going. And my normal ability to choose my thoughts, Jose Ortega y Gasset said, "Tell me to what you pay attention, and I will tell you who you are." So normally I'm very good about concentrating on what I can control, concentrating on how I can contribute, concentrating on connecting. And this one day I dipped into despair. And Clarissa Pinkola Estes said, "I do not hold a chair for despair. We are made for these times." And I came back to center. And center is, in the midst of what's happening, what can I do about it? Can I do anything about the suffering or the struggling? If I can, then take action, Sam. And if I can't, be what Peter Diamandis calls a blue caper. It is, I had a chance to see Peter Diamandis, who helped found the X Prize at the United Nations. And he said that there are two kinds of people in this world. There are red capers, and red capers are superheroes, and they fight evil, and we need them. And then there are blue capers, and blue capers do not fight evil or injustice. They are a force for good. And I thought to myself, well, actually, I think there's three kind of people. There's red capers, blue capers, and black capers. And black capers are not, they're not fighting evil, and they're not a force for good. They're just complaining about what's going on.
Indeed.
I'm going to be a blue caper. And are you familiar with the Stockdale paradox by any chance, Marina? You know, a friend brought this to my attention that day when I was in a dark mood and helped me pull out of it. And Jim Stockdale was the highest ranking naval officer who was shot down over Vietnam, and he was a POW for 8 years. So on a daily basis, they never knew when they were going to be tortured. They never knew how long they were going to be in these cells. And he was asked, when he survived and was able to come back to the United States after being a POW, prisoner of war, for 8 years, he was asked what he learned. And he was asked who made it and who didn't. So let's look at the parallel. I think many of us are feeling imprisoned right now. Many of us are struggling or suffering or being tortured by some of the things that are happening, by having a loved one in a hospital and not being able to be there. And he said it was the optimist that didn't make it out. The optimists are the ones who said, we'll be out by Christmas. And Christmas would come and go and it wouldn't happen. We'll be out by Easter, and Easter would come and go and it wouldn't happen. And he said the unrealistic expectations, the optimistic expectations broke their heart again and again. It was the pragmatist who faced facts and had faith that made it out. And that pulled me out of it, which was, all right, I'm going to face facts. This is happening. There's a lot I can't control, and I'm going to have faith. I'm going to have faith that I can prevail. I'm going to have faith that I can continue to contribute. I'm going to have faith that I continue to stay connected. And so here's my question. How, in the Stockdale paradox, we are not just a realist looking at the facts and being filled with despair, and we are not just being an optimist with unrealistic, optimistic expectations, because Annie Lamott said expectations are resentments under construction. How can we be both a pragmatist and doing our best to make a difference and to manage our mindset? And it is not that we are denying what is happening. We are just choosing, in the face of what's happening, to continue to be the quality of person we want to be, even when other people aren't. How about you, Marina? How are you dealing with the Stockdale paradox and having faith and facing the facts?
Thank you for asking. I don't know if you noticed, I got a bit emotional as you were speaking, because certainly this is, a time of vulnerability and a time of, a lot of ups and downs emotionally. I am the quintessential optimist, and I always feel, everything's going to work out and everything's going to be great. And I love putting out that energy in the world. But it's not sustainable if that's all you're relying on. So you're absolutely right. To me, I had the incredible opportunity of seeing Simon Sinek speak on the day that New York announced the state of emergency and to close down New York. So it was his last speaking appearance. And he spoke about the power of being of service to others, and how when you are bringing value to other people and helping other people, it shifts your perspective and gives you meaning. Or I don't know how that works, but it works. I'd never been a type of person to volunteer or to, consider myself, an exceptionally good human being at all. Somehow, once, the pandemic hit and things started becoming more and more serious, my business started drowning, all those things were happening. I put myself out there to help people who are looking for jobs and give them free advice and free support. And that somehow miraculously, I didn't know that it would have the effect. I remembered Simon Sinek's words after, as I noticed that this was helping and happening for me. I remembered that is just incredibly powerful. But I want to ask you, Sam, as somebody who does have this incredible ability of making people feel better, giving people hope. And I want to just have an opportunity to dive into a couple of examples where just with your words, you completely change the outlook and perspective. Do you find that it puts you in a position where people see you as a source of strength and they're less likely to say, are you struggling? How are you doing? How can I help? I find that when you are that, individual of wisdom and, strength and positivity, then it comes with, people just assuming that you're doing great, you're fine, you're good, and not necessarily being there. So who is there to support you in your time of emotional need?
Well, first, thank you, Marina, for that wonderful question. I really am, Shakespeare said, be wealthy in your friends. And I am very wealthy in my friends. My sister has been running my business for 20 years. And so we have implicit trust, and I am grateful to her. I talked about my sons, Tom and Andrew, and their families, and they have the light on in their eyes, and they're really contributing. Andrew's got Tribute, which is how to give a meaningful gift. If you can't be there in person, you can send a tribute on someone's graduation that they're not going to be able to go to. And a tribute is all their friends and family saying how this person has impacted them or what they mean to them. So it's really a meaningful gift. So they keep the light on in my eyes. My son, Tom, works for NASA. And he is doing work that he was meant to do. And I could go on. And however, let's bring it to this time, is that I have deliberately reached out to Mariah Burton Nelson, who has been a longtime friend. We used to play golf together. She's one of the country's experts on Title IX. She was the VP of Innovation at ASAE. Now, when I lived in Washington, D.C., it was kind of embarrassing because Mariah is a good friend. We lived 20 minutes away from each other, and we would often see each other once or twice a year because we were so busy, and now is the time for me to correct all of the good friends that have fallen by the wayside. That, what is this, too busy to stay connected with people that I admire and respect and who are doing good things in the world? So I'm fortunate, not just because I have people in my life. I create what are called Rising Tide, Raising All Involved salons, where in Boulder, we have about 20 women, fascinating women who are doing interesting things, adding value in the world. And we have a monthly call where we divvy up our time. Often it's 4 minutes each. So what are we doing? What's one thing where we are making a difference? And at the end of every one of those calls, I am elevated and feel celebrated because I am taking the initiative to create these Rising Tide, Raising All events instead of just missing the fact that I can't be there in person. I can be there in person virtually.
And let's talk about that, because you've spoken many times now on social media about changing our perspective and our verbiage and just rethinking definitions. And you also mentioned your family, so this ties in together. One of the biggest things that people are, sharing right now on social media as far as the negative impact of COVID is for their children not to be able to see and spend time with their grandparents, and of course vice versa, and a lot of heartbreaking messages about that. And then you shared the experience you recently had watching your grandchild in a yoga class on Skype or Zoom. And I remember you said, and it was just really beautiful, you talked about, the old definition of being a part of something and the new definition. Could you please share that story?
You bet. Michael Altshuler said, the bad news is time flies. The good news is we're the pilot. And I talk with so many people who are missing people. And I think that if we reframe what it means to be there in person, that we can be with people right here, right now. And here's a quick example. It's that a friend of mine, Dr. Diane Girard, is actually Tom's godmother. She's the top psychologist on Cowey. And when the Hurricane Iniki came through Cowey and stripped the island of all of its greenery, but also shut down the hotels, blew down people's houses, that Diane was asked by the county government to please help people who were in despair, who had had everything taken from them. Do you know what her first piece of advice was, Marina?
What was it?
Establish rituals. Because in a world turned upside down and inside out, we need something that we can count on, something we can trust. So back in the hurricane, it was, even if it was going with your family to get water at the same time every day, in a world where you can't count on anything, now you've got one thing to count on. So I've established rituals with my family. Every Friday night is story time with Natalia and Mateo. Now, on story time, they're sitting in my son's lap or in Patty's lap, and I have a book and I'm reading a story to them, or they're reading a story and telling me about it. And you know, Marina, if we reframe what it means to be there, I am there in that room with them. I'm watching the expression on their faces. They're filled with wonder. I am right there when we're singing Into the Unknown from Frozen with Elsa. And so this is something I learned from Ram Dass, by the way. It's a couple years ago, I was in Maui and I was working with the client, and she said, "Oh, are you going to see Ram Dass while you're there?" I said, "Well, I'd like to." She said, "Let me see what I can do." Next day at 10 a.m., I get a call, and it is my friend, and she says, "Ram Dass will be at Cam 1, which is Kamaoli 1. It's a beach in Kihei. He's going to be at Cam 1 at 10:30. If you want to meet him, go." I dropped everything. I grabbed my swimsuit, and 15 minutes later, I am there on the beach with Ram Dass. Now, he had already had his stroke, and so he's in a water chair and in a vest so he can float, and he has water gloves on so he can paddle. And there's about 12 of us. And we went out into the water, and if you've ever swum in the ocean off Maui, this is where my sons Tom and Andrew were brought up, right there on Keawe Kapu. It is the cleanest ocean. It is cool and warm all at the same time. So we're in a circle around Ram Dass, and he has this smile from here to here. He is so fully present in just receiving, reveling in that moment. And he throws his head back and he says, "Oh boy, oh boy, oh boy." And we all throw our heads back and say, "Oh boy, oh boy, oh boy." And then his smile gets even larger, and he throws his head back again. He says, "Oh joy, oh joy, oh joy." And we throw our heads back, "Oh joy, oh joy, oh joy." It was one of the most exquisite experiences of my life. And afterwards, I had a chance to ask him a burning question that I'd been thinking about. And I said, "I know you wrote the book, Be Here Now, and I know I may be wrong about this. I think it's now and next. I don't think it's an either or. I think that happiness is a blend of being present and having something to look forward to." And Marina, I think that is one of the keys in this time of coronavirus and COVID, where we cannot control much. We can control that. How do you want to know a secret to how we can be here now, even when all this is happening around us? It happened when my sons were growing up on Maui, and we had rituals. Dr. Diane Girard had recommended rituals, so we had nightly rituals. And every night, no matter how tired I was, no matter if I'd just gotten back from a trip, we would sit down and I would either read them a story or I would tell them a story, and we would have our nightly back rub. And now we'd made up names for the back rub. So it was bumper cars and slap happy and chop suey and finger rain. And I'm in the middle of giving them a back rub, and now I am inches away from them, but I'm a million miles away in my mind because I'm going to fly out the next morning and I'm worrying, did I pack my handouts and what time is the presentation? And did I tell the meeting planner, what? And all of a sudden, my mind came out and down through my eyes, and I saw Tom and Andrew as if for the first or last time. And an ordinary moment became extraordinary. And instead of being preoccupied, I was so fully present and so filled with gratitude about the miracle of them being there, the miracle of being their mom. And Marina, I think we can be here and now instead of here, there, and anywhere, anytime we want, if we just give someone or something our full attention, and if we look at them as if for the first or last time. And all of a moment, a preoccupied moment will become a present moment, and we will be right here, right now.
Goosebumps. And I remember you said, one of the things that we say is that we can't touch the people that we love that are in their own places of isolation, and I remember reading you saying, yes, but you can touch them with your eyes, and it's just a different type of touch. And I could not get that out of my mind ever since. I thought that was incredibly beautiful.
Maria, so let's imprint that. It's when the boys went off to college, I tried to distill everything I knew into the talk. and one of the things we talked about is that if you have a decision to make and you have options, take the bolder of the options. And the other was that Queen Elizabeth said, good memories are our second chance at happiness. And the way to have a second chance at happiness is that when we are in the middle of a memorable moment, to imprint it. Because if we think about what it feels like right then, we can revisit it anytime we want. So Hero, who's not even 3 years old, had his first yoga class. So there was Mickey and Hero watching a yoga class. And the yoga instructor said, stretch your hands to the sky. And I saw a little 3-year-old Hero stretch his hands to the sky. And then she said, now touch the earth and thank the earth. And I saw a little 3-year-old Hero place his hand on his earth. And she said, now, and Marina, what you just said is, I could not touch him with my hands. I could touch him with my heart. I could not touch him in person. I could touch him with my eyes. And even though we're 1,000 miles apart, I was right there with him because I was imprinting it. I was using my senses to fully experience it. And I am asking anyone right now if they think of someone they're missing because they can't touch them with their hands. You can touch them with your heart. You can touch them with your eyes. And the next time you're FaceTiming with them, on Skype video, Zooming with them, imprint it. How grateful you are for them. Savor the moment. For that moment, the world will disappear. You will be fully present. And it is an antidote to being here, there, and everywhere, which is a prescription for worrying about things that we cannot control.
Well, to say that I have been savoring this moment and this conversation would be an understatement. When I was just introducing you, Sam, and telling the story of, how I came acquainted with your work, I mentioned that as I'm reading this book, I really wanted to finish reading it before our conversation today and stopped myself because I was in the moment and I was savoring. It is a book to savor. and I keep going back and rereading. And just again, your ability. This is one of the things I want to learn and I want to work on, just your ability to rephrase and reframe things. You mentioned a neighbor that told you, how are you dealing with being an empty nester when your sons moved out? And you said, it's not an empty nest, it's an open nest. They can come back. And I just thought, oh, I've heard that phrase so many times. I never thought about it. Or, when you want to accomplish something, changing the language from what you don't want to do to what you want to do, right? So saying, I'm no longer going to work in the evenings, instead of thinking of what you're going to be doing in the evenings and saying that. I wish that we had hours and hours and hours more where I could ask you more questions, because how I felt emotionally going into those conversations versus how I feel now are miles apart. And I would like to thank you for your wisdom, your generosity, the groups you're hosting on Facebook, and giving so much of your free time to put the light in people's eyes and in people's hearts. Your work is meaningful and it is exceptionally appreciated. I would like you to know that.
Thank you, Marina. It's Viktor Frankl is really kind of the originator of understanding that all of our freedoms can be taken with us except one, and that is the freedom of our attitude. And this is not, positive thinking. This is in the middle of a crisis. He was in a concentration camp. And we have a crossroads every single day. And when we're at that crossroads, we ask ourselves, will this belief or behavior help, or will it hurt? And if it won't hurt what we're thinking or what we're doing, our greatest human freedom, when all of our other freedoms have been taken away, is to choose to be the quality of person and to think and to do things that help instead of hurt. And it's really as simple as that.
And you are doing just that. And thank you so much for that. Thank you so much for your time, for agreeing to speak. Am I allowed to share the link to the Some Days Not a Day in the Week group on Facebook so that people could join?
Please do. It's my give back. As you know, it's free. There's no upselling. There's no switch, it's no bait and switch. It's just that I figure for half an hour every day, we go deep into, all right, what's important? How can we set it in motion? What if there's someone who's giving us pushback? What if we don't know how to do it? So I share all of the best lessons learned from my years on the water and from all my interviews. And hopefully it gives people something to look forward to. And it's like a little mental life raft in these times where there's a lot going wrong. It gives us a half an hour a day where we get to focus on how to make things right.
It really does. And it's not just that half an hour, it sets me up for the rest of my day. And then I miss it on the weekends. So now I'm reading the book on the weekends instead, since I can't have that during the week. Thank you so much, Sam. You're just an incredibly inspiring person. And I thank you for your time.
Thank you. I've enjoyed it. Hope people found it interesting and inspiring and useful.
Without a doubt.